Welcome back to the TrustWave Keynote stage. Please welcome Chief Executive Officer of the Electronic Transactions Association, Jason Oxman.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to TRANSACT. On behalf of ETA, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the final day of TRANSACT. We are the payments technology industry's premier event and the largest and most influential gathering of the payment industry professionals on the planet. So it's a real pleasure and honor to have everybody with us today. You know, this is our last day together, and we are once again bringing together innovators, investors, legacy and emerging payments companies that drive our industry forward. The connections that you will make here at TRANSACT are the connections that will help your business grow and thrive. You know that ETA, as the trade association of the payments industry, is here for you 365 days a year. As your voice and your community, ETA advocates, educates, and brings together more than 500 member companies from across the globe. ETA has invested tens of millions of dollars into developing events, educational content, political advocacy, and industry research that advances the payments technology ecosystem. Our global interconnected economy is approaching a cashless future. It's built on payments, enabled through innovative point-of-sale solutions, quick and ultra-secure e-commerce, mobile and smart platforms. Now, looking ahead to the future of our industry, a lot of talk about how peer-to-peer payments could change how we buy things online and in stores in the same way that those peer-to-peer payments are changing the way we exchange money with one another. Networks and services are being built around the needs of businesses and consumers for fast settlement, low cost, and widespread availability. It's important for the acquiring industry to understand how peer-to-peer and mobile applications are changing the payments industry. That's why I'm so pleased to have with us today on the TrustWave Keynote stage, Luann Alexander. Luann serves as Group President at Early Warning, which is probably better known to most consumers who watch TV as Zelle. She's one of the leaders behind Zelle, one of those who built Zelle. You all know Zelle is one of the fastest growing peer-to-peer network services in the United States today. Lou is a 20-year veteran of the financial services industry. Zelle launched in mid-2017 and quickly moved more than $75 billion between accounts in its first year. I'm very excited to hear from Lou this morning about how Zelle is doing, what peer-to-peer means for the future of our industry as it migrates, perhaps, from a consumer technology to a merchant-facing technology. And I know you're all interested to hear about what peer-to-peer means for the future of your business. So please join me in welcoming to the TrustWave Keynote stage, Luann Alexander. Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Please. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, thanks for having us.
And we're looking forward to hearing all there is to hear about Zelle. Thank you very much for taking the technology side of the dress code.
I know I told Jason I was going to be a contrast to the bow tie today, so I ditched the dress and the coat. But you're looking pretty dapper.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think for the topic of the day, which is peer-to-peer services, your dress code's probably closer to where we need to be than mine. But that aside, thanks for being here with us today. You know, obviously, you have some numbers out in the market about Zelle's progress. I mentioned the $75 billion in your first year, which wasn't even a full year. Bank of America, in their quarterly release, noted 125% growth to about, I think, $9 billion
right.
in volume just in the quarter. And Bank of America obviously is only one of your many bank partners. So let's start off and set the stage for where Zelle is today, and give us a little flavor for how it was that Zelle came to be.
Yeah, so well, Zelle is very nascent as we've been talking, but it is growing very, very quickly. Let me just ask, how many of you had heard of Zelle before you saw it in the program? All right. How many of you have tried Zelle or are users of Zelle? What's wrong with the rest of you guys? Okay. So yeah, we are very early in the process. We have about 19 financial institutions up and running, but we have over 90, almost 100 financial institutions who are signed. And a lot of what's going to happen, Jason, in the next few months is you're going to see many of our technology providers bring on technology capabilities to allow hundreds and even thousands of financial institutions to join the network. So we are very early in the process. You also asked me how we came to be. All right, a little bit of a history. Clear Exchange was a company that several financial institutions had put together in order to exchange P2P payments. And Early Warning has been in business since 1990. Oh, in fact, thank you for making me younger than I am. It's a little more than 2 decades now. But Early Warning has been in the fraud and risk management business for about 27 years. And we realized that it's the combination of both of those things that would allow what was Clear Exchange and a 2 to 3 day payment to become a real-time payment, moving money from checking account to checking account literally within minutes in a safe, fast, and secure way. And the banks also recognized that their products were all named differently. They all worked differently. So if I wanted to pay you back, Jason, and you're at a different bank, I didn't know how to tell you to go accept my payment. And that became a major barrier for adoption. So when we started the combination of Early Warning and Clear Exchange, which ultimately has become Zelle, we had 3 strategic directives from the CEOs. 1, make it ubiquitous. Everybody can play. Every financial institution can play. Make it a common user interface so that it's very easy to tell your friends and family how to send and receive money. And then absolutely make it safe and secure.
So I want to start off by talking about the competitive landscape that you entered when you brought Zelle to market last year. Obviously, there were some peer-to-peer services that particularly millennials were familiar with, like Venmo. Right. But you noted the frustration of those of us who are not millennials who tried to move money. I'm a Bank of America customer, and I remember when I first tried to set up the ability to send money to my au pair, who was also a Bank of America customer. So Bank of America to Bank of America in the app took 3 days for the money to move. So were you trying to solve for that latter problem, making it faster for me as a Bank of America customer? Or were you trying to give me as a Bank of America customer a reason to try a service like peer-to-peer that I thought was just for kids?
Both. In fact, certainly we support the Faster Payments Initiative in the US, and I probably have some Federal Reserve friends in the audience. So absolutely, consumers are demanding expediency. And many of us want it just for convenience, but we also recognize that there are many consumers, citizens in the US, who really need their money and need it very quickly. So as a company, we certainly rallied around the capability of ensuring that someone can be paid very quickly on Friday. Someone can get money if they've wrecked their car. So we also support corporate disbursements, insurance companies being some of the primary dispersers in the network today, but certainly providing that fast capability of money. Our target range is from 18 to 55 years of age. So we went into this knowing that not only were we launching a product, but we were also going to have to teach people how and when they would use it. And it's a journey. Consumers don't change the way they pay very quickly, but certainly something that we've gotten a lot of consumers behind it, as you can tell from our numbers. And stay tuned, we'll be announcing our first quarter numbers very soon.
Good. So I want to ask you about the interesting way in which you frame this, which is I'm doing, and I know this as a user, I'm using the Zelle capability inside my Bank of America mobile app. But it's still branded Zelle inside that app. And you noted that one of the reasons your bank partners liked this idea is they had disparate brands out there, and it was hard to give a central message to users that this was a safe and secure way to move money. But at the same time, I can imagine that's a unique branding challenge because, for the banks, their brand is everything, and they want to make sure that at least the cover of what is being used is branded the bank itself. So how do you kind of walk that tightrope between your bank partners wanting their own brands prominent and you wanting the Zelle brand in there because you're doing some consumer-facing advertising and you want people to see that in there?
That's right, and we recognize that we needed somewhat of an acceptance brand, right? Does your bank do Zelle? But as we tested some of the reasons why consumers were not using P2P today, safety and security, it's like Pavlov's hierarchy of needs. You have to fulfill that need first. So in combination with the bank, there was a great trust that the bank had safe and secure practices, that moving money very quickly was going to be much, much safer when I get that from my trusted financial institution. So you're right, we're going to continue to show that banking brand prominently. Zelle is just the brand to make sure that you and I know that even though we're bank at different banks, that we can exchange monies.
So it sounds a lot like the model that the card networks use. And of course, the card networks used to be owned by the banks, and you're not owned by the banks, but they are your customers. Is that the model you're using? And if that's the case, do you really think of Zelle as more of a network than a service, if you will? We
do think of it as a network. And again, person-to-person payments are probably what most of you have heard about. We will be utilizing the network for many, many different things. So again, corporate disbursements is a product that's up and running today. It's used for financial aid, delivering of financial aid. I talked a little bit about insurance companies. It's a very high need, particularly if single mother, wrecked my car, I can't get to work, and I can't get it fixed until I get the money from the insurance company. To have that in my account within seconds so that I can go to work, and continue to make money. Individuals who work for lawn care agents or lawn care firms, for instance, generally they're taking a paycheck to the bank on Friday, and generally it's after 2 o'clock. So not being able to get full availability of those monies until Tuesday, when what they really need is to go to the grocery store and buy clothing and birthday gifts and all the things that we do at our time off on the weekends. So you'll start to see us use it in a variety of different ways, not just P2P, not just corporate disbursements, but also enabling any place else that you can think about where checks and cash are heavily used and movement of money isn't as fast as we need it to be.
That's interesting. So it sounds like when you conceptualize your competition, you're talking about your competition as cash and checks. And all of the services you've mentioned are traditionally cash and check based services. Because one question that comes up a lot about Zelle is, again, your partners are the major banks that obviously are big issuers of debit and credit cards. And one of the ways that a lot of these things that you're talking about, moving money around, have been done on are debit cards. And a lot of questions come up, well, are the banks effectively competing against themselves with the debit card transactions? But it sounds like you're talking about this is not competition for credit and debit, it's more competition for cash and checks. Am I thinking of that correctly?
You are definitely thinking about that correctly. And as you know, the financial institutions have a lot of cost basis in their ability to move currency, provide currency, manage checks, and the clearing and settlement of checks. So certainly there's benefits for our financial institutions in reducing every transaction that used to be check and cash. But we also have a number of businesses, likely that we all use businesses today that are home services that don't accept cards for a variety of different reasons, or SOHOs that aren't able to have card acceptance. So certainly taking all of those types of payments, and if you would think about them today, where do you write checks? Where do you use cash? In fact, let me ask, how many of you today have more than $200 in your pocket? Now, this is a casino, so I was hoping that there would be a few winners out there. One person has more. Okay, how many people have $100 in your pocket? All right, and a lot of us that travel, we used to carry cash for what? Two things, cabs and tips. So we don't have to carry it for cabs anymore. But how many of you guys have dollar bills in your pocket for the bellhop outside? And the rest of us either have to figure out, am I going to give them the 10 or the 20, or am I going to say sorry or ask for change? It's a really difficult situation. So there's a variety of different use cases if you think about the friction.
Can you solve that use case, that tips use case? Because that's the only reason I have cash in my wallet.
And do you have the right denominations?
Well, because I went and got change before coming out here.
So one of the ways we see it solved today, and this is not the end of the story, we really are thinking about this problem, but we do see one of the uses of Zelle as human ATM. So actually, a friend of mine was saying that, hey, they were trying to enter a 5K run, but they didn't got to the run and they didn't accept credit cards, so their friend paid their money and they Zelled them the money back. I find in the area of Scottsdale where I live, if you go to a restaurant, they mark all the parking spaces off, so you have to use the valet. At the end of the night, where am I going to find the 5 or the 10 to pay the valet? Get it from my colleague and I Zelle the money back. If you're probably college campus, you walk up to a bar and all of a sudden there's a $10 cover charge that you didn't expect. So you get the cash from a friend and Zelle the money back. So that's one of the ways that we see it used. But Jason, we're really thinking about how Zelle can be more of a prominent player in the primary payment, not the secondary payback.
Do you have any statistics on ATM usage by your bank partners? Are you actually creating a reduction in the demand for ATMs?
Well, we do have, US Bank published some numbers about cash use, and I would point you back to their press release, but they certainly are seeing a reduction in cash. And recently, ITE also did a survey of about 2,000 individuals and certainly was seeing a reduction in both cash usage as well as check usage. So hopefully we're making a difference.
Right. It's your war on cash.
That's right.
So you mentioned a couple of commercial applications for business segments that traditionally have not accepted electronic payments. You mentioned rent, the service industry, the carpet cleaner, the dog walker, the babysitter. One of the interesting trends we've seen in peer-to-peer from some of your contemporaries, colleagues, competitors in the marketplace is the ability to use your peer-to-peer wallet balance for e-commerce shopping. So Venmo is the best example of that, owned by PayPal. Millions of e-commerce merchants are PayPal customers. Now you can use your Venmo balance for e-commerce applications. In other words, migrating it from a P2P to a P2B, I guess you'd call that, or P to e-commerce service. What's your assessment of that as a trend in the broader peer-to-peer industry? And what are your thoughts on what Zelle's going to be doing?
Yeah, I do. I mean, certainly some of the major competitors in the marketplace have expanded horizontally and are offering it as a purchase product as well as a P2P service. And I want to be very explicit. Zelle is not that today. Zelle is for transactions between friends, family, people that you trust. So while I would say pay your sister back for the tickets, to Hamilton, don't pay the guy outside of the arena where you can't validate the authenticity of the ticket.
That's actually in your terms and conditions, right? I mean, you actually have that explicitly set out for your customers. Don't do this for people you don't know.
It is, but hey, let me ask, how many of you guys read terms and conditions? About as many of you guys who have $200 in your pocket, one. So we know consumers don't read that. So it is an educational challenge today to make sure that because it is safe and secure and backed by the bank, doesn't mean that we have purchase protection. So we validate that you are a human carbon body, that we know who you are through our identity and authentication services, that you have been screened by a bank and have a financial product. So we know who you are, but we not necessarily test you for dishonesty and whether you're actually going to send the shoes that somebody bought from you over Craigslist. So unlike credit cards where you pay for those additional protection services, that isn't where Zelle fits today. So what's the future? I don't know, but if we were to go there, Jason, we would have to put a lot more thought into that issue from a consumer purchase protection and what that might look like in the future.
It's a very different business model, right?
It is.
You have to engage in the risk and compliance.
Yeah, and it's something that credit cards do very well today.
Right, and PayPal does as well. PayPal obviously has those merchants as customers. You don't have that same business model,
right.
So they can interact with the merchants in a different way than you can. While we're on the subject of the competitive landscape, we've seen a lot of I'll call them the social media companies, technology companies get into the peer-to-peer space, both for things like Google email capability. You can email money in Google. Square has a Square Cash peer-to-peer product. Facebook now allows you to send money within Facebook Messenger. You can even do some commerce in there. What's your assessment of the entry into peer-to-peer? You must be a little flattered that they're all coming in as you're coming in, but what's your assessment of all these new players in the landscape?
Well, I don't know if flattered is the right word, but I think it does speak to the opportunity and the needs that we're all trying to solve. And there's other what I would call tired old models in our payment system. I would even point to online bill pay. Online bill pay is 30 years old. In fact, how many of you, if you are under 30, use online bill pay at your bank? Millennials don't sign up. Oh, do you do? All right, you're one. But a lot of millennials will not.
He works for ETA.
Thank you for that. But a lot of the millennial generation just expects a different way to pay, and we recognize that, and I think some of the competitors do as well. I would say, we think of Zelle not just as, in the future, a place that you go in your banking app to do P2P, but how Zelle can appear in many different things that you do in life. We say when money moves, life happens. And what we want to do is put Zelle into those places where life is happening. So if that happens to be in a social environment where I'm managing the family reunion and getting paid back for the beach house at Hilton Head Island, then we need to be there. So I think some of the future is going to be not just a place in my banking app, but simply secured by my bank, but appearing in a lot of different venues, if that makes sense.
I want to get your assessment. Frank, this may sound like an odd question. Why is this working so well? I mean, the history in our industry of competitors collaborating together to make something like this work is not very good. It worked with Visa which was 1958. Yeah. But you look at the mobile payments system, for example. There was an effort by some of the mobile network operators called ISIS initially, which was an unfortunate name choice.
Yes.
Eventually changed to SoftCard, which was a only slightly less unfortunate name change. That didn't work out. You've got AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile trying to cooperate together on a mobile payments platform. Look, the merchants tried to create essentially a competitor to the card networks through MCX, or currency as they eventually called it. 40 of the largest big sophisticated companies that know a lot about payments, trying to build a competitive network, working collaboratively, didn't work. Why is this working?
I really have to say it's probably because of Early Warning's business model. So almost 30 years now, we've been a collaboration between financial institutions in fighting fraud and risk management. So we certainly have the right.
Put a place. Can you, just for those who don't know, can you tell us about Early Warning's genesis? Because it is a decades-old company, and I think a lot of people don't know that. They think of Zelle coming out last year and came out of nowhere.
Yeah, Early Warning was developed on the back of a napkin in a bar in about 1990. It was probably a restaurant, but I think bar sounds cooler, so I say bar. But it was put in place to manage check risk, particularly between East Coast and West Coast. West Coast banks were kind of the last ones to hold the bag on check clearing. So Early Warning created a product called Deposit Check. It's available in the marketplace today. We also sell it as Payment Check to many, many merchants. And we service more than 2,500 customers, financial institutions, as well as merchants directly. And then indirectly, hundreds of thousands of places. We support check guarantee services, for instance, ACH guarantee services, whether that's at point of sale or in the merchant space. And then we have a wide variety of identity authentication services, and particularly services for validating the authenticity of a mobile device, identifying that mobile device, tying it to a human, as well as understanding through the mobile carrier who is paying for that mobile device. So that was very important as we brought Zelle together to use all of those capabilities within the network.
so sorry, I interrupted you. So back
Now I
to
forgot what you asked me.
Back to the question of why this is working.
Oh, so why this is working.
Yes.
But I think early warning just had the right business model. So 2,500 financial institutions together, trusting early warning to bring services to the marketplace. We have the right governance structure in place to understand what those needs are and to detect those needs. Truly, over the first year of Zelle, we focus very specifically on bringing the right technology partners to Bay. So Fiserv, FIS, Jack Henry, Co-op, and now we've added a number of new technology integration partners who are already doing business with financial institutions and can help pave the way for their entry within Zelle. So we're very open. In fact, there's probably folks on this exhibit hall floor that we should be doing business with, and we're very open to some of those partnerships.
So let's talk about the partnerships. You have some public announcements that you've already made about where you are as far as the bank part. You have the big four. I think you maybe 17, is that the number of partners, official bank partners?
Oh, the banks?
Yeah, the banks, yeah.
Well, officially we have over 90 signed.
Okay.
So, but live in the network today is about 18.
18.
I'm 19 because somebody's coming up really soon, and maybe last night, but around 19.
Okay. So what's the pathway forward? What are you challenging your team to do as far as signing up more bank partners? And really, there are, if you count the credit union is going to be part of this as well?
Absolutely,
So
and already are.
16,000 financial institutions and credit unions in the U.S.
We want them all.
You want them all. So what's the pathway to get them all?
Right, and obviously early warning's small sales team is not selling all of those direct. We focus mostly on the top 50. It is through our partnerships with Fiserv, who actually has their customer meeting down the hallway or down the street, is a big portion of that. FIS as well, Jack Henry. What's important to us to have partners who could get to the checking account, because part of this value proposition is money needs to leave my account immediately and needs to appear in somebody else's checking account immediately. We also expanded the partnership with Visa and MasterCard. So we are also using the debit networks for individuals whose banks and credit unions, I'll say it this way, are not yet participating. So if your financial institution's not yet available in the network, you can download the Zelle app from the App Store and with your Visa or MasterCard branded debit card participate.
And does that take a little longer if I'm going that path for the money to move, if I'm using the debit card because
No.
I'm not yet a partner, or how does that work?
No, not all debit cards are eligible. So since I'm in a group of payments professionals, it has to be fast funds enabled, which means money can move within a 30-minute or less time frame, mostly within seconds. So there are cards that we would not enroll in Zelle because they aren't eligible for real-time payments.
So we're here at the annual gathering of the merchant acquiring industry. So everybody here has merchants as customers, either provides products and services directly to merchants or sells those products and services to merchants. So with your crystal ball, do you think there'll be a time somewhere in the future where a Verifone POS terminal will have a MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover, Zelle on it?
Boy, you're putting me on the spot. Who's to say? I mean, today we're really focused in the check and cash space, but I do think moving money very quickly has an opportunity to disrupt, displace, cannibalize, but then make better the payment systems that are in the marketplace today. And I do think the U.S. in particular is really on a cusp of a lot of decision making around how we move money, how we clear, how we settle, and making that much more efficient than we've ever done in the past 50 years, if that's our comparison point.
I like that. And is a good answer as questions like that go. Speaking of the future, there's a lot of talk about technology startups. And Zelle has a big office right in downtown San Francisco, and I'm sure you're there because you want access to the best and brightest Where are you doing most of your hiring today? Do you do the software development, the programming, the engineering in-house? And do you find good talent for that? Are you looking at potential acquisitions at some point in the future, either to bring on the talent or to bring on the technology? What's the future of the headcount, and what are you focused on in your hiring?
Right, and Early Warning has done a number of acquisitions. In fact, we did 2 acquisitions in the year that we acquired ClearExchange. We expanded our authentication capabilities through the acquisition of a company called Authentify. So we do have a Chicago office. That was the original Authentify office, and that's where many of our identity authentication services are still, our software engineers are there. The San Francisco office was the original ClearExchange office, and we've grown that office to be software engineers, our marketing and PR people are there, my product people are there. Chris is in the front row if you saw him yesterday in the panel discussion. And then Scottsdale is headquarters. So I would say we're hiring in all of those locations, plus we do have a number of employees that work remotely out of their offices. We have probably 20 analysts, statistical analysts that work out of the Austin, Texas area, right next to UT. But we've removed that office now and they all work from home, so we're very flexible in some of our locations. But Scottsdale, Chicago, San Francisco are our major hiring locations.
I want to ask you to leave our audience today with your view of the future, kind of broadening out from Zelle and peer-to-peer. What are the kind of the trends in financial services technology, payments technology that you're keeping an eye on, you think are the things that are going to be the most important for our industry to know about, to learn about, to watch, to track, to potentially benefit from as you look across the entire landscape? What are you watching most closely in financial services and technology?
Well, blockchain is on this stage coming up next, and I know it's a very confusing topic that has loads and loads of potential. We just have to learn how to use that. So that's certainly on our watch list. I think, internet connected devices are going to totally change how we all interact. Not just in a social aspect, but also in a commerce and payments aspect. So we certainly watch that. Again, if life is happening inside of my car, and in my car I need to tell Siri or Alexa or potentially Zelle to make a payment for me, then we want to be there where life happens. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. If I had my crystal ball, I think must have been about 1970 that we all thought checks would be dead in a decade. I really do believe that there will be a time when I'd say, remember when we used to write checks? And some 20-year-old will say, a what? So I really do see that we are going to remove the paper process, move it electronically, move it digitally, and do that in a way that's very safe and very secure.
Last question, how are we doing on progress toward making Zelle a verb?
Originally, our IP people didn't want that to happen, but hey, I will Zelle you money. I love it. I think it's great.
It works. So you are going to Zelle me money?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. Ladies and gentlemen, Lou Ann Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.